Do I need to apply to the top 15 colleges or not? Do I
Mhm.
just stick to the safer colleges? I have been offered an admit from Michigan Ross, from UVA Darden, got into McCombs, got into Georgetown, got into UNC, got into Emory, Duke, and Kellogg, and Ross being a school where they put the culture. Something that made me stand out in my application, I was able to call out references, anecdotes that have from the people I've spoken. In the second round, we worked together, and then you brought in the aspect of telling a story in your essay. 120K from Emory, a full ride from UNC, 60K from McCombs. I think even Georgetown had scholarship offered. Putting your output across from the interpersonal point of view,
Mhm.
from the human angle, would really work.
Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Applicant-X. Today we have with me Abhinav. Abhinav and me, we worked together this year on a number of applications, right? And Abhinav's story definitely had its ups and downs. From a lot of good leadership stories to some zigzags in recent career decisions that he had taken. But he received tons of admits. I think probably 4 or 5 admits. I don't even remember how many, with some scholarships along the way as well. But let me first start with giving the opportunity to Abhinav to introduce himself. Abhinav, just let us know about you, a brief about your background, your academics, your career pre MBA, and then we'll move forward from there.
Absolutely. Like you mentioned, my name is Abhinav. I did my undergrad from MIT Manipal in electrical engineering, which was a 4 year course. And post that, I worked at Goldman Sachs for 4 years and then moved into a family friend's business for the last 1 year in Chennai. So I've stayed in the risk management field throughout my career. So I've got 5 years of experience. So around May, April of last year, I decided that I wanted to pursue an MBA. And, I started working on my applications since then.
Perfect, perfect. Can you tell me a little bit about how many schools did you apply to and which schools did you apply to?
Yeah, so I applied to a total of 10, 11 schools.
Okay.
I applied to 4, 5 schools in the first round and the rest with you in the second round. So I'd applied to Kellogg, I applied to Columbia, I'd applied to Tuck, Darden, Ross, Macomb, Emory, UNC, Stern, Cornell, and
Got
Georgia. Yeah,
and Georgetown as well. Got it.
yeah.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so Abhinav, I know you've received, I think, around 5 admits. Can you tell us a little bit about what admits you've received from which schools, if you can talk about?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I have been offered an admit from Michigan Ross, from UVA Darden, got into Macomb, got into Georgetown, got into UNC, got into Emory. I'm on the wait list for a couple of colleges as well,
Okay.
which I'm not looking to pursue at this point in time, given
Mhm.
that I got into one of my top choices already. But
Got
these are the colleges that have been accepted into.
got it. Got it. And what is your top choice again? Out of
Um, Michigan Ross is my top choice as of this moment. I
okay.
still do have time to finalize my college,
Hmm.
but Michigan Ross is where I'm leaning towards.
Got it. And why is that?
I think it's a mix of both. That the fact that I think it is a culture first school. You do hear about Duke and Kellogg and Ross being a school where they put the culture first. So I feel as an international moving into a new country where you don't know a lot of people, having that ability to form a strong culture and a tight knit group was important to me.
Hmm.
And my ambitions are also to move into consulting. Consulting is fairly strong in all your top 15, 20 colleges. It
Okay.
doesn't make a big difference whether you go to a Harvard or you go to an Emory. Consulting is strong irrespective. But what really mattered for me while choosing a college is the 2 year experience also that I will have,
Hmm.
along with a long term brand. I do feel Ross as a college has a strong presence in India. So
Hmm.
even if I do want to come back to India in the future, I thought Ross made the most sense amongst the colleges that I got into.
Got it. Got it. I know when you approached me just before, I think round two, you had a few rejects from R1 and then maybe one waitlist as well. And
Yep.
then after R2, you got some admits along the way. So, what was the first, school that you heard from when you received an admit?
The first admit I got was from UNC actually. It came way before the deadline. We
Right.
were supposed to hear back in March, but I heard back, I think, a week or two after my interviews, which was
Hmm.
surprising.
Hmm.
So I had received a 100% scholarship from UNC on top of a Vetter Dean's fellowship that they have, a flagship fellowship. So that was really exciting. So that was the first college I heard back from.
Got it. And did it lift some weight off your shoulder? Where were you at
Absolutely.
that point in time?
Yeah.
How was it feeling?
Yeah. I think the wait is the toughest part because you get done with your interviews and then you sit almost for a month or two waiting for the results to come out. So I didn't have to go through that phase. I knew worst case scenario, I'm getting a free MBA at a top 20 college.
Hmm.
So that did lift a lot of weight off my shoulders.
Definitely, definitely. I think honestly, after the very first admit, right, that you get, it's a
Yeah.
little. I think it's something that you always remember because now you know that you're going to land somewhere, and there's
Yeah.
just so much pressure of what you're planning to do.
Yep.
Um, Abhinav, I know you applied to a lot of B schools, right? And your entire application journey also had a lot of up and down. How would you really describe it to someone? How was the entire journey for you like?
I think one thing I needed a lot in this journey was a lot of patience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I learned to be a lot more patient because I started preparing for my GMAT, I think April, May of last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I finally received out this March of this year. So it has been a 10, 11 month process.
Okay.
So I think you do have a lot of self doubt along the way. Do I need to apply to the top 15 colleges or not? Do I
Mm-hmm.
just stick to the safer colleges? So I
Mm-hmm.
think tackling those questions was important for me along the way. And given the fact that this is a 10, 11 month long journey, your mind sort of keeps wavering on what to do.
Correct.
So I think I would explain this process as something that requires a lot of patience
Mm-hmm.
and not doubt yourself too much, I'd say.
Got it. Got it. I think it's probably easier said than done.
Yeah.
But you hit upon a very important point here, which was regarding school selection, right? And you, of course, applied to around 10 schools throughout R1 and R2. How did you go about selecting your schools? How did you think that, hey, these are the safe schools, or how many safe schools do I apply to? How many ambitious schools do I apply to? What was your entire strategy like?
Yeah. So, and I would say a benchmark that I understood from speaking to people, in T15s and M7 colleges is that if the average GMAT of the class says a 730 and India needs to have a 750, a plus 20 is the bare minimum, I would say, unless your profile is exceptional otherwise in terms of work experience.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have a 695 on the Focus edition, which is approximately 750. So when I did look at colleges, I wanted to apply to colleges that had a 730, 720 GMAT as my safe schools, and then apply to ones a few above that and a few below that, which is why I considered McCombs and Emory to be my safe schools.
Okay.
They have a class average of 710, 720, and my GMAT sort of just fit above that, which
Mm-hmm.
would make it easy for an Indian male engineering candidate, which is an overrepresented group.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one strategy I used. And then I applied to a couple of schools that are easier to get into than McCombs and
Mm-hmm.
Emory. And then I applied to a few schools which are much, much harder. So my strategy was to spread it across, put in that extra effort and not just restrict myself to 4 5 colleges,
Mm-hmm.
but go through the spectrum. If you see, I've applied to M7s, I've applied to T15s, I've applied to T20s, I've also applied to one T25.
Correct.
So my outlook was that I had to do my MBA this year. So I didn't want to, stick to only the top schools. I wanted to have a spectrum across.
But was GMAT the only consideration to decide which schools were safe, ambitious, and not?
No, no, not just GMAT, but also sort of what I want to do because I wanted to do consulting. I also had to choose schools that were strong in consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Like me going to a tech heavy school and saying I want to do consulting is not going to get me a convert. Emory is a consulting heavy school, so me going to Emory with aspirations of moving into consulting definitely helped in
Mm-hmm.
getting a scholarship and getting a convert offer. So I would say that is also a big factor into
Okay.
choosing a school as to what you want to do. Like McCombs is very good for tech and entrepreneurship, so people who are looking for that should focus more on McCombs. Emory is great for consulting, UNC is great for healthcare. So I feel if you're able to choose schools basis what you want to do, it'll make a lot more sense. But consulting, like I said, is common across the board.
Correct.
So the advice as such wouldn't work for consulting, but any other field, I would say you would probably have to look at schools also basis what their strengths are.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. But I was also talking about, so in terms of fit, you are saying you looked at what sectors the schools were good at, right? And of course, the GMAT score played a part for you to understand whether you would, the chances of you getting an admit. But did you also look at other factors of your profile in terms of how good they were or how bad they were to determine whether the school would be a good fit for you in terms of
Yeah.
its
So
strengths and
yeah. So for me, other something else that I looked for was just the culture of the school in
okay,
terms of work fit. I like to be extroverted. I like to talk to people. I like to attend events, and I was focusing heavy on schools that put events first.
okay,
So Michigan Ross is very strong for having a great 2 year experience. They've got a
Mm.
lot of get-togethers. They've got a lot of events. They put a lot of emphasis on the community. So does McCombs, and Emory also has a very small knit community. Again, focusing on the culture of the school. So I think
Correct.
that also played a factor, because I think there are 25 top schools, and I chose 10 of them. So what ultimately played a role into it was that, and also the location, of course. I wasn't very keen on the western coast, so
Okay.
I did not apply to any west coast schools at all,
Okay.
irrespective of whether they're in the top 20, 15 or not. So that
Mhm.
also played a factor. I kept myself to Midwest and the northeastern region.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Abhinav, okay. So, in terms of your overall applications as well, you've received a bunch of admits, you've received a bunch of rejects as well, right? And maybe a couple of waitlist there along the way as well. How were your stories different across different schools? Did you plan each application according to the school, or were your stories consistent across all your applications?
I think the theme of my story was consistent across. My career goals, my leadership stories, my resumes did not change as per school.
Okay.
But each school focuses on a strength of their own. For instance, Darden has something called the case study method. So they really do value people working in a group, working in a closed setting. So I was able to pinpoint stories from my resume, from my background experience, that align with that value of the college. Like Ross, for instance, was very strong with action-based learning.
Mm.
So for me to actually pick out a story that is also part of my resume, but also indicates that I have put this in effect in the past, definitely helped. So I think I did tailor stories to colleges, but again, they're also from the same sort of crux, I would say.
Got it. Got it. So the overall theme was same,
Pretty
but
much same. Yeah.
got it. Got it. And throughout the application process, right? So there are so many different steps that you have. For example, the research, you talk to alums, you talk to different people, maybe the admissions team, then you do essays, interviews. Where do you feel you struggled the maximum, or what was the biggest challenge area for you across the application journey?
I think speaking to getting a hold of people was difficult to speak to them to understand. But again, since I've been doing this process since May, June of last year, something that I think worked really well for me was the fact that I started school research when I started studying for GMAT. So I
Okay.
started doing it hand in hand. So that did give me a lot of time. But I would say the most important aspect here would be school research, and knowing that you've done the research will help you add those small points in your essays. And I think all the schools care about that. They just don't care about you having a great profile. They want to know that you will go there if admitted. So I
Got it.
think it is important to do the school research. I feel that was the most important part. While it wasn't excruciating as such to do it, it still took a lot of effort to connect to a lot of people, to go through their websites, understand all the offerings that they have, in particular to what you want to do, aligning it with your goals. So I would say school research was something that made me stand out in my application. I was able to call out references, anecdotes that I've from the people I've spoken to,
Mhm.
specific classes, specific activities that interest me in the college. So I think these small bits made me stand out from a very wide application pool.
A lot of people really struggle with school research because they don't really know how to start, right? Was there a structure that you followed so that you were able to maybe narrow it down to, hey, these are the steps that I need to do as far as my research is concerned?
Yeah, so I had a set of questions that I wanted to ask every student, whether it's about the employment outcome, whether it's about how classes are conducted, whether it's about extracurriculars in the school. So once I did have that, I tried to first reach out to students where, if I have an alum base, I'm from Manipal, so I try to reach out to students from Manipal to see if I can get a connect. If not, what really helped me was to attend these admission events.
Right.
So I think once you attend an admission event, I think all the admissions officers are very sweet, irrespective of the school they are from, and
Mhm.
you can build that one-on-one rapport, and then you reach out to them saying, "I want to get into consulting, and I'm considering Ross. I want to get into consulting," and they put you in touch with admission representatives, student admission representatives. So that was one way I was able to get access to students who would
Mhm.
have otherwise probably not responded to me had I just cold emailed them on LinkedIn. So I think that was the first step I did, to reach out to students through admissions officers, and also also there are Ask Me Anything events that every college hosts, which is run by students. So once you have those contacts, you can speak to students. But end of the day, it comes down to you knowing what you want to get out of that college. So
Mhm.
if you know that, if you have those questions handy, I think it'll be much easier.
Another important thing when it comes to school research is, again, a lot of students don't know when to stop because they have no idea whether they now know the full extent or maybe the necessary extent to maybe shortlist that school, or maybe they just need to do more and more research. Sometimes I've seen students wasting a complete financial year or complete academic year on that process. How much time or exactly did you have a deadline in mind when you were doing that, or how long before the deadlines of the applications were you sure that, hey, let me now start with the application journey, let me now go ahead with these shortlisted schools?
So I was doing everything parallelly because I started my whole process in the month of May,
Okay.
end of April, May, and my first round was in August, September. I think early actions were in August. So I had like 4 months to do school research, give my GMAT, write my applications, get my LORs, make my resumes. So I was doing everything parallelly. So I did not. My mental deadline was that I'm going to start with the school research, and I wanted to choose schools in my first round to just sort of test the waters. I
Okay.
wanted to see how I would do,
Hmm.
if give myself also time to re-attempt GMAT if necessary. So I just chose schools according to that logic. Just wanted to test the waters. I wanted to apply to early action schools,
Hmm.
see what the feedback is, because applying early action Darden will give me a result by October.
Correct.
So that I can use as a feedback for my round two. I was waitlisted initially, like
Okay.
I didn't get through in October. So that was also a feedback for me that something is lacking in my profile. So what I wanted to do was to just test the waters in the first round. So my research was going hand in hand with me already writing my essays, but I felt the research came in very handy for my round two colleges where I had ample time after round one without focusing on GMAT, just the applications where it actually came into play. So in that aspect for round two, I'd say I was looking at colleges in phases. Like when we worked together, we were working on colleges in phases, and I
Correct.
think I had my research for the college at least a week before my essays ready, in terms of what I want to know, what do I want to call in the essays,
Hmm.
what specifically am I looking to get out of the college that I can use as an anecdote in the essay. So I knew these things at least a week before.
Got it. Got it. One important thing that I know everyone would love to know about this is, how did you approach scholarship? Because you have a full ride from UNC, you also have 50-60% scholarship from some of the other schools as well. Did you have any particular strategy with which to approach the scholarship? Did you negotiate with schools? If yes, how did you go about that? Could you walk us through?
I am, yeah, I'm actually in the process of negotiating right now for a couple of schools. But the other scholarships, I had a 120K from Emory, a full ride from UNC, 60K from McCombs. I think even Georgetown had scholarship offered. But I think these scholarships were offered merit based,
Right.
and I didn't have to negotiate as such. And
Okay.
I am in the process of negotiating right now. But I do feel, like we discussed, the negotiation is also fairly straightforward. There is not much you can do. You can only put up your counter offers.
Correct.
It's not going to be a conversation. It's just going to be an email where you're letting them know that these are my other offers. But what I genuinely feel is, once you have your admits, you pretty much know the level you stand at. For me, I feel I've been given full rides from the T20s, but I've
Hmm.
not been offered scholarship at the T15s.
Correct.
So I feel there is a step to this. Say that I have been offered scholarships at T15s. My profile is probably an M7 profile. So I think that is something I've learned, that if I get accepted into an M7, I'm likely getting a scholarship at a T15. If I'm
Correct.
getting into a T15, I'm most likely getting a scholarship at a T20, which is exactly what's happened with me.
Correct.
So I would say scholarship is not in your hand. It's all decided. The only thing in your hand right now to improve your scholarship chance is probably a very high GMAT score, which I'm sure everyone is targeting for any which ways.
Correct.
So I don't think anything can be done from the scholarship standpoint.
Perfect, perfect. That's a very interesting point of view there, Binav. And from what I understand, you are saying for the merit-based scholarship, at least all you can do is hope for the best application and GMAT score, which you anyways do, right?
Yeah.
And after that, it's about negotiating as well, and that depends on other scholarships and other offers that you have received from different schools.
Yeah.
Okay, coming to the application piece now, right? Because again, school research and shortlisting and thinking about scholarship is just one part of the entire journey. But when you've done the shortlisting of the schools, you then get into again the heavy work, which is writing essays, resumes, interviews, and all that. I want to first start with essays and ask you about a very general question. Yeah, how did you approach essays? How did you look at your stories? Is there some strategy to it, some insight, some tips you wish to share to other students who are listening right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first round of essays, I didn't look at it with the best lens possible. And then in second round, we worked together, and then you brought in the aspect of telling a story in your essay. I
Hmm.
think my first round essays, I would say, were sort of mechanical in nature. I
Okay.
did this, I achieved this, so I think I'm good. But I think in the second round of essays, we had a lot more story, a lot more depth to it, giving a background and then showing them how things were and how I was able to change it. So I think that really helped. I think telling a good story is important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, they read 4,000 applications. Everyone's done great stuff. It's
Correct.
just about how you tell your story that matters. So I think that is something I understood a little later on, which
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to apply in my first round of applications, but I was able to do it successfully in round two.
Got it. Got it. So storytelling is definitely one aspect. How do you think your research also impacted your essays? Did it have a good part?
Yeah, I think research played a huge part, like I mentioned before. I knew what to call out,
Mm,
what anecdotes to use. I knew what the colleges are known for. Like Ross is known for action-based learning, so and they do have a question on action-based learning also. So
correct.
doing a research shows, and you talking about that shows that you value what they are offering at the
Mm,
end of the day. And Darden in specific also asks you what you want to do there. How do you want to contribute to the community at Darden? So I think they are heavy on case based, like I mentioned. So you showing them that you've done the research does add brownie points. So I think essays that also played a huge role as to the people I spoke to, the feedback they gave me, the inputs they gave me about how the college is, and using that to show them that this is what I want and this is what I've already done, which is aligned with whatever the school also visions. So I think that really helped.
correct. I also remember you having, some good stories also along the way. For example, we had a second chance story. We had a story on prison reforms, on schools, some leadership work that you had done in your organization, the previous one. Was there a way that you were able to choose which stories to use where, right, for which schools, or did you have again a set of stories that you used consistently everywhere across the schools?
I think I had a set of 4 to 5 stories, like you mentioned,
Hmm.
which all showed my emotional quotient. It showed me my leadership abilities. At the same time, showing impact at work and outside of work.
Hmm.
So I had a mix of stories outside of work and at work, and even at work, I had stories which showed more of my emotional quotient side and stories that showed more of my, I would say, technical side.
Correct.
So we didn't use a lot of our technical stories because it wasn't necessary.
Hmm.
So we stuck to mostly stories where it involved people, it involved leadership. So I think again it comes down to the question asked. I would suggest everyone have 4 to 5 good stories that
Hmm.
they can pick from and use it for whatever the question is, because I feel end of the day all leadership stories have the same essence irrespective of the question asked. I think all leadership stories have the same essence. You see a problem, you connect with the person to solve the problem on an interpersonal level,
Hmm.
which is, I would think, the best leadership story that's out there. So I think having a set of 3 to 4 stories and picking from them would really work.
Any tips for Ross essays? How did you approach them, or any cultural fit factor that you use to modify your stories accordingly?
I think cross essays, they very specifically ask on the action based learning approach.
Hmm.
So I think if you've done work with people where you have put people to, get their hands dirty, try it
Hmm.
out themselves to learn, I think that is a great action-based story. Essentially saying theory doesn't need to be the best way out. You can do things to learn things. So
Hmm.
I think any leadership story that involves you helping people to understand by the way of doing rather than just learning
Hmm.
uh, probably helps with Ross. And also, I think Ross essays are the most brief essays I've written.
Hmm.
Uh, they've got one essay on some contribution outside of work. They've
Hmm.
got one essay on how you find yourself to be a good fit with action-based learning, showing them that you've done it in the past and showing them that you can do it in the future. Like whatever you've done in the past is the best indication that you will do it in the future. So I would probably say to focus on these essays more on what you've already achieved
Hmm.
using action based learning rather than saying this is what I will do with action based learning, because that is just in the future. Anyone can say I will do this, but showing that you've already done it, I think, is what will make you stand out. So I
Definitely.
think for that essay, that will be one approach that I took, that we discussed, that also worked. And then, of course, the third essay, I think, in every school is going to be why MBA and why their school.
Correct. Correct. Hmm.
So again, there your research about the school comes into play
Correct.
on why you want to go to those. They've already covered action-based learning in the first essay, so there's no point repeating that. So here is where your additional research, which is not on the surface level, which you cannot find on the website, will come into play.
Got it. Interesting tips there on how to approach the Ross essays, really. Did you at any point in time, by the way, while you were writing your essays? Now, I'm asking this because this happens again with a lot of students. Did you feel that your essays were not really good, or maybe they were not really, MBA worthy as such? Um, was there any point for any particular school as such that you felt that?
Yeah, I think for most schools, I did feel that. I mean, initially when I started off, at least we worked on Tuck, I think, as our first school. So when I did work on that, I did feel that I wasn't sure because I didn't know how other people's essays are.
Correct.
Like I didn't have a point of comparison. Then I got the opportunity to see some essays on your website
Hmm.
where people had used it, and then looking at them, I understood that this is more or less there. So
Correct.
looking at other people's essay and then seeing past admit essays did
Hmm.
give me some sort of hope that my essays are also up to the mark. But when I just looked at them for the first time, I wasn't entirely sure what to make out of the essay or what is it that is expected from the college.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Definitely. I think looking at some comparison helps you understand where you are and maybe look at it more objectively rather than just going with your gut feeling
Yeah.
that way. One thing I also understand about Ross is that it values humility a lot, right, in their candidates. Now, I get this question a lot from people who are applying to Ross when specifically when they're writing about their leadership stories or something, some achievement of theirs, right? And even with your case, when you went with the contingent worker stories, right, that we use probably for Ross, how do you really balance the leadership piece or the achievement piece with humility, right? Because it can come across as if you're bragging about what you have done.
Yeah.
How did you go about that?
I think I think all these leadership stories, they it really doesn't matter if you've promoted revenue generation, growth. It is end of the day ensuring that people can work in harmony and
Hmm.
that people feel belong to the company, which is what my story was focused on. It was entirely focused on a subsection of people not getting the right opportunities. So I feel I'm not sure how to make it come across with a lot of humility, but I would say not to focus too much on showing them the technical output of things. Rather, show the interpersonal output.
Hmm.
Say that yesterday someone wasn't active in a group discussion and today they are, and that is because of you. Now
Hmm.
your output is that this person is contributing more, and I feel any interpersonal output that you put across on an essay is not going to come out as brash. I
Correct.
think the minute you start talking about I've saved X billion dollars for the firm, I think that's when it becomes brash.
I
I would
think.
say,
Yeah. Please
yeah.
come.
So I would say, yeah, I would say putting your output across from the interpersonal point of view,
Mhm.
from the human angle, would really work.
No, I think that's a very important tip, honestly, especially for Ross, because I've seen so many people quoting numbers, like you said, right, saving X billion dollars and whatever. But interpersonal care, right, interpersonal thought and EQ quotient is what I think and I believe Ross really cares about. I think it is really, really sort of important for them. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. You have anything to
I
add?
just want to say you've already quoted these numbers on your resume, so there
Correct.
is no need to bring it back on your essays as well.
Okay, another question for you, Abhinav, is the why MBA piece, right? Now, a lot of people struggle with articulating it maybe correctly or politically correct way in the MBA application. Did you have that clarity of thought when you first started writing your applications, or did it evolve over time with you? How did you really go about that?
It really evolved over time. My why MBA, I mean, my reason for doing an MBA was to pivot into consulting and get myself exposed to um, get a wider business acumen,
Hmm.
which is the case for 80% of the applicants. But also that cannot be my direct why MBA reason. I had to also link it to my past and how that past is gonna affect my future. affect my future.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that did naturally come to me in sort of finding that link between what I've done in the past versus what I will be doing in the future, and how an MBA plays into that. So
Yep.
that did take times. In fact, I would say in my first round of applications, it was very different from how it was in the second round of applications. So spending more and more time and sort of introspecting as to why I want to do an MBA in the first place helped me.
Got it. Got it. I think honestly, I also believe your overall story also evolves, right, throughout the number
Yeah.
of applications that you do, and maybe the third or fourth school is probably where you really hit that good mark or the great mark that you feel for your essays. Okay.
Yeah.
Coming to the overall application journey, I know you've mentioned that patience is something that you should really have when you approach your overall applications, because it's a longer journey that you have. At any point in time you felt that you were about to give up, or you felt that, hey, this is just too much, balancing it with your work life, balancing it with other personal aspects of your journey? Did you hit that bottom and then maybe crawled your way back up from there?
I I actually wanted to give my GMAT last year,
Okay.
and I didn't give my GMAT last year because of the reason you said. I couldn't manage it with work. But this year I was very sure that I would get through with it irrespective.
Hmm.
So I exactly didn't feel that I couldn't go through with it. But of course, I was fortunate enough to have done well on the GMAT on my second attempt, and it was in the span of 3 to 4 months.
Hmm.
So that did help me out a lot. But I would say otherwise, it's best for people to start off with GMAT early, because that is the only point in the application where you feel that you cannot probably proceed with. Everything else will come to you, essays will come to you, recommendations will be fine, resumes will be fine.
Hmm.
The only thing that is going to involve and take a lot of your time is going to be GMAT. So if there's one reason you feel that you're going to be stuck and not move forward, it's going to be GMAT. So
Got
I'd say get done with GMAT first,
it. Hmm.
and then the rest of it will be very smooth. I
Definitely.
mean, it's a long process, but it's much smoother.
Totally. I totally agree with that, because GMAT is also something that if you don't sort of get it out of the way, it will come back and haunt you later as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And even during and after the applications, I've seen people retaking GMAT when they're waitlisted. I
yeah,
think it's much better if you give some time to it, without focusing too much on the applications, at least initially.
yep.
Now let's talk about interviews, right? You've given a bunch of them, right? I first want to understand, are most of the B schools interviews, are they the same, right? Are they asking the same sort of questions, the same sort of vibe, or are there
Yeah,
like?
no, I think they're exactly the same. Some have admissions officers, some have alums, some have current students,
Mhm.
but the essence of the interview is pretty much the same. They want to gauge your fit, they want to gauge your communication skills, and they want to ensure that you are someone who comes across with a lot of humility. Again, not someone who is bragging. So I think these are the criterias that they look for. They aren't going to grill you on you know, your resume points.
Hmm.
They don't want to know how you achieve things. They want to know how you manage people. How have you been able to navigate issues at workspace that involves multiple opinions. They want to know difficult situations you've been part of where your leadership skills have sort of shined. So ultimately they just want to know how you are as a leader, how you are as a person. And it's not so much about the technical aspect of things. My first interview, I remember, I completely prepared about what my company does, what is my role in it, how did I how did I make a workflow better, but none of that was even touched upon. They only cared about the interpersonal aspects of me making things better. Like if I worked on a project X and that project generated Y amount of revenue, they don't care that project has generated revenue. They care about how I built relationships to make it work. So it is all again about storytelling. I think by that point, you would be really good at storytelling, really good at writing essays. So interview answers should come to you very naturally. But I would say not to focus too much on the technical aspect of your resumes, and just focus more on how you are as a leader. What are the stories you can share? What are the difficult situations you have been able to overcome in the past? And I think that's the only thing that matters. And of course, a good introduction on who you are.
Hmm. I think that definitely helps you stand out. But Abhinav, how much time did you give to the entire interview piece? Did you start right after you submitted your application, or did you wait for the interview call to come to then begin your preparation?
I think we had a couple of interview mock sessions, so
Mhm.
I did that. And outside of that, I was doing extensive school research even at this point in time,
Hmm.
because it's not just about the essays, it's also about what you talk to them about the school. Because why laws or why Darden is a definite question in the MBA. Why their school is a definite question. So the more superficial your answer seems, in the sense that if these are just things on the website,
Hmm.
it's not going to be helpful.
Correct.
So this is where your research again comes into play. If you've done a thorough research already, you know what to use. But even otherwise, you can reconnect with people, with those people you built a relationship with in the past 2 3 months. Just get tips as to how to navigate specific school related questions. So I would say again, research plays a huge role in this aspect of the interview.
Got it. It's also important, when you talk about research, how, again, of course, it plays an important role throughout your application process. But did it happen to you when, you talked with a lot of people, a lot of alums, maybe students from different B schools? Did it happen that they changed your perspective on maybe even applying to those B schools, or maybe shortlisting them positively, or maybe removing them from your shortlist? Let's do that.
Positively, definitely. I think I had very warm interactions with people from McCombs and Darden
Hmm.
specifically. I
Hmm.
think everyone I reached out to responded to me. So that definitely made me feel that, that the culture that they talk about is just not a thing on paper, and that it is the reality of things. But apart from that, I wouldn't say any of the discussions swayed my decisions. They were more informative than actually deciding, making a decision for me.
Hmm. Got it. Makes sense. Perfect. So, Abhinav, we are in the final leg of our session. I just have another two or three questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
And the first question here is about selection of the school. So I know you mentioned why you picked Ross, right, over the other schools, or why you're probably going to go with that. I also want to understand a little bit about how did you really weigh the brand factor, right? Of course, Ross is a better brand than maybe, let's say, a UNC or a McCombs, versus the 100% right that you got at UNC. How did that, how did you really balance it out to then say that, hey, no, let me go to Ross still?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just not about the immediate, you know, cost saving that I'm looking for. I think this is a long game.
Hmm.
It's not just about the first 2 3 years. Of course, post MBA salaries are fairly constant across schools. There's not just because I go to Ross over the UNC wouldn't mean that I'm going to make a lot more money. But I do feel in terms of long term network, career opportunities, Ross does have an edge. That's where the brand plays a bigger role. Even like I mentioned, these top schools have a strong presence even in India.
Hmm.
So for me, if coming back to India, which is always a thought for me, I feel having a network in India would really be helpful. In that aspect, I feel Ross, Data, and even Mecoms to a certain extent has a very strong network in India. So I think your network in your home country, for me, that really mattered. The long-term sort of network that you will have, I feel Ross sends a lot more people to a lot more different industries in a much wider region. So I feel my network also would be spread accordingly. One drawback I would say of choosing regional schools is that your network is going to be restricted to that region. Like
Hmm.
Macomb is strong, very very strong for the Austin region,
Correct.
but specifically for the Austin region.
Hmm.
So I think that was also a factor for me as an international. I didn't want to restrict myself to a certain region. Of course, this you can overlook all of this if you're good at networking. This
Hmm.
need not be a strong consideration, but nevertheless, I thought this is a long game, and this is not something that I need to take a decision over to save a few, not a few dollars, a lot of dollars for the next 2 years. But I still went ahead with that decision, keeping the long term sort of network in mind, as well as the experience for those 2 years. I do feel I'll get to meet a lot more people as well, and I feel the cohort also made a big factor for me. Was a big factor. Loss I think has 400 students versus I think 120 at Emory, and I
Hmm.
felt more comfortable with a larger class.
Right. Got it. Got it. I think honestly, I had a very similar perspective, right, up until recently. But for me, also one of the considerations that has jumped in is the recent, turn of events where it feels as if we are running towards a recession, like environment maybe in the near future. What has been your view on this? Because you would have talked with a lot of students. How does placements look like for B schools right now? A lot of people are worried about B school placements. A lot of people are worried about how it would look like in the future. What sort of vibe are you getting with your interactions with the student community so far?
I think people are getting placed. Even if you look at this 2024 report for Darden or Ross, I think they've had one of the best placements in a very long time.
Hmm.
I feel that's where again your network comes into play. Colleges like Ross and Darden are able to place very well even in a down year, versus I would say a regional college would probably struggle.
Got it.
So I think that is also a factor in choosing your long-term brand over your short-term wins of going to a college that with a scholarship. But again, right now things do look gloomy, but I don't want to think too much into it. Uh, People are still getting jobs. Of course,
Correct.
it's a little bit harder for internationals,
Hmm.
but if you're willing to, I feel, put in that effort, you can find a job. Maybe not the best job, but again, that's where your network comes into play. Maybe I'm not getting the best job today, but my network is going to stay for life, and I can always make the switch when things get better.
Definitely, I think that's something that one should always keep in mind. Abhinav, let's move to Ross right now. What are you most excited about? Looking at your future. I know the town, the uni town is really good. It's a very small place, and
Yeah.
it has an amazing culture. But what are you really, really excited about
I mean,
studying here?
Ross, I think, is a huge sports school. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to experiencing the sports culture there for sure. The
Hmm.
football games are huge there, the American football games, so that for sure. And they have something called an M-Trek where you get to meet people before college commences. It's
Okay.
like it's probably an international trip, so I'm looking forward to that as well. But
No.
just otherwise, I think getting back to school is exciting. It's been 5 years since I
Right.
graduated from undergrad. So getting back to school and your usual stuff you that comes along with going to school is what is really exciting for me.
Perfect. Perfect. Abhinav, any final thoughts on the entire process? Anything that you would like to say to people who are starting their journey right now, who are looking at this?
No, I mean, just like whatever I mentioned, get done with GMAT first. GMAT is not the only thing that matters, but it matters.
Correct.
Uh, get done with GMAT first. Do your research properly about the school. Be sure that you want to attend the school. Apply only to schools that you know you'd attend to. Otherwise, it's pointless just doing all that research. So only apply to schools that you know for the fact you'll attend, if offered an admission. Also, you should, I guess just be patient. It's a long
Mm,
process. It's a 1 year
correct.
process. Yeah,
Correct.
that would be it.
Correct. I think that's the most important piece right there. But Abhinav, thank you so much for joining us today. I really want to thank you for all the truth and the humility that you've shown us today, the answers that you've given us. I think some of the insights were very well structured for people to really understand how do you really look at all, the entire application journey objectively, and how do you look at interviews, how do you look at understanding where you really stand in terms of a T15, a T20, or an M7. I think this would really give some clarity to a lot of people who would be watching this. But Abhinav, again, thank you so much for your answers, for your time, and I really want to wish you all the best about your journey, with Ross next year.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Devan.
Thank you.